Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site, and today we're here with Bill Moore. He is the Chief Risk Officer at Compeer Financial. Thanks for being with us today, Bill.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here. As part of the Farm Credit System, we have a great partnership with the University of Minnesota, and I'm happy to come speak.
Very good. Well, thanks again. And as folks might see in the background behind us, Bill and I are in St. Paul, Minnesota at the Leman Swine Conference. And Bill, you spoke today to the group about the changing economic landscape in pork production. What were some of your key messages?
Yeah, as I am not a swine industry specialist, I linked where the economy for agriculture is to the U.S. economy. And we're at a spot where agricultural exports are super important to not only this industry, but to agriculture as a whole. We have a very large trade deficit because we feed the world. So the things that go on in Washington that impact trade impact this industry. So that's important for this group to understand those things.
Very good. And you talked a lot about tariffs, interest rates, like some macro things. Tell us a little bit about your message.
Yeah, there's been a lot of disruption, or at least perceived disruption in the U.S. economy from a change in tactics that hasn't been used in 20 or 30 years, and that's the use of tariffs to control trade. There are positives to those approaches, there are cons to those approaches, and understanding that tariffs don't do X or Y, they're really something in the middle because they're far more nuanced. So for us, global trade for the pork industry represents about 26% of what we produce. So being able to get that product out into the world is not only important to our industry, but to individual farmers' profitability.
Very good. And from a global perspective, you said Brazil is taking over dominance in world trade. And this is something we hear over and over again, what a big player Brazil is, right?
Yeah, Brazil really started ramping up on their world exports in the grain segment. China invested a lot of dollars in what's simply called the Silk Road.
Right.
That's really to imply Asia investment, but they've really invested a lot in South America. Brazil used to be probably a lowest cost provider on the farm, but then to get it off the farm cost a considerable amount more than the infrastructure that we have. Well, China's tried to level that playing field with lots of investment dollars. They have better roads, they have better rails, they have better ports now than they had even just 10 years ago. As a result, they have really taken over the majority of global exports of corn and particularly related to us, soybeans. The U.S. has fallen behind in their ability to be able to feed that world, which is what we're good at.
Right.
The same thing could be occurring in the protein side. Brazil's now on their second step of how do they invest in and create a swine product that they too can feed the world. It's going to be a very difficult competition going forward.
Very good. And from a more macro global standpoint, you mentioned BRIC, and it's been a little while since I've heard that acronym, but it still exists. And you mentioned that the U.S. maybe needs a version of BRIC, right?
We do. I don't think the way to win is to be able to pick off where Brazil sells its product. BRIC stands for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. There's South Africa's in that mix as well, but they're a true global operating consortium of which trying to develop a closed-end loop to feed themselves. The United States needs to be able to do the same in order to maintain its level of competitiveness across the world, whether that's combining with Europe, Japan, other parts in Southeast Asia. Could you even get India on board? That's a possibility as well. But we need to focus on demand for our products, not just the production of it.
Very good. And taking a step down to the U.S. level, outlook for U.S. pork producers. What was your message for the U.S. pork industry?
Well, they're in a pretty good spot today after 18 months of very weak results. We probably have the highest margin contribution in maybe 10 years when you consider the cost of their inputs and the value that they're getting on the cutout. That being said, interest rates are a tremendous factor in not only ag but in pork production. It's a very asset-intensive business that requires capital investment and usually financing. The Federal Reserve controls short-term interest rates. They'd like to see in the next 2 months, maybe another interest rate cut, and then maybe a few more in the next year. The counterpart to that is it means the economy is probably slowing. So you have to be able to balance that as well. Now, for us, the good news is the ag industry and the U.S. economy don't work in tandem, and many times they often work in counterbalance. So while we hopefully can maintain 50 pounds of domestic consumption and then whatever we consume submit to the world, we also need to be able to make sure that the profit and loss statement at the bottom line is managed the right way.
Very good. And one final bit that just kind of came to mind is you said agriculture is the tip of the spear, right? In a lot of these situations with exports, with financials. Talk a little bit about that.
That's true. You can look at it in practice. In 2018, the first trade war with China, there was a lot of good things that came out of those trade agreements. But to get there, agriculture had to be that tip of that spear, and in turn, the government recognized that and compensated farmers on their behalf. There is an expectation we will see that again. It's not nearly as well defined today as it probably could be in a couple months. We've generated, in August alone, the government took in $30 billion of tariff revenues. That really started to ramp up in April, so you've had April, May, June, July, and August, 5 months. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, thinks you could do $300 million a year of revenue from just tariffs. Secretary Rollins spoke over the weekend, or maybe it was late last week, and said, hey, maybe we can divert some of those funds to the U.S. farmer. Since we're the tip of the spear, maybe we can get compensated for that. There'll be legal challenges to that. It won't come easily, but I do think that this administration is committed to making sure that our farmers are safe because food is such a national security issue for us.
Good. Well, thank you, Bill, so much.
Sure.
Great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Very good. This is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site.